I'm going to talk today about trademark hygiene. It's an important subject for trademark owners. Whether you're a startup or a multinational business, you should be checking in with your branding requirements and making sure you're on top of them. If you don't, you can almost guarantee at some point somebody else will, and it probably will be to your detriment. So what is trademark hygiene? In short, it's looking out for your brand or brands and making sure that it or they are properly protected in the countries in which they need to be protected. Skimping on trademark protection can have costly outcomes, and ultimately it can make your business less attractive, for example, to a purchaser, since they, and not you, will then have to put in place protection and deal with any unresolved disputes. Effectively, trademark hygiene is a trademark audit of your rights and ensuring that your rights actually reflect your current and your future business needs. All businesses evolve, names change, logos are updated, companies move, new product lines are launched. All these things are natural commercial triggers for carrying out a trademark audit. I'm going to talk you through some of the events and explain why you may need to update your trademark protection. So here goes with the trademark hygiene checklist. Updates to your logo. If you have registered protection in place, you may need to refile if you have started using a new logo. If you have no protection, you should certainly consider filing. Unregistered trademark rights are the subject for another video, but essentially you'd have to rely on your evidence of use, your reputation in the mark if challenged. It's much simpler to capture your rights in a trademark registration. Are you launching or have you recently launched new product lines? Or have you started business in different areas? For example, you were solely in cosmetics, but you've now expanded to clothing as well. Your existing trademark protection will be unlikely to cover the new area, and you should update your trademark cover. Otherwise, again, you are relying on unregistered rights either to challenge third parties' use and registration of a mark, or worse, to defend your own use if challenged. Again, a trademark registration will simplify matters and reduce your costs. Are you expanding your sales to outside, for example, outside of the UK? Remember, trademarks are territorial. A national UK right will not cover you, for example, in the US. Here, you need to balance up the costs of filing outside of the UK against profit made. There's little point in filing, for example, for an EU mark if you have 2 to 3 sales and you don't anticipate an uptake. Have you authorised others to use your trademarks, for example, through a licensing or a franchise agreement? Check that the marks are being used correctly, and if need be, update any agreement with any updated marks and make sure that the license agreement is recorded at the UK IPO. Any ownership or address changes. This is a classic one which many entities and individuals forget to record. It's in your best interest to keep the portfolio up to date. If you need to rely on a mark and it's in a company name you changed 5 years ago, you'll need to sort out the ownership changes and record them. This is called perfecting the title before you can rely on them fully. It can, of course, prolong matters. Check in with your trademark portfolio at renewal time. As a general rule, don't renew registrations for marks which you are no longer using. And if a product or a service line has been dropped, you can choose not to renew in a class where you are no longer using. Look at marks you are no longer using as well. Can you commercialise these through sale or possibly license them? And what about duplicate marks? This is particularly relevant when you have national UK rights and also have the corresponding comparable right which originates from an EU registration taken onto the UK register at Brexit. Do you need both? Can you not renew just one? These points to consider are all good trademark best practice. And ideally, you should be auditing or checking in with your portfolio roughly every 6 months. Edwin Coe would be pleased to assist you with this. We've looked at trademark registrations and good trademark hygiene at the registry. What about using those trademarks? What's the rule on that? Well, the basic principle is quite simple. Use it or lose it. And that's because although trademarks are given a protection period of 10 years in the UK, they can be cancelled or revoked by third parties if the owner of the mark cannot evidence its use in the UK for any 5-year period. And that use must be use of the mark as filed. Anyone can apply to revoke a trademark based on non-use in the UK under section 46(1) of the Trademarks Act 1994. You don't need to be in competition with them. You don't even need to know them because anyone can file these cancellation proceedings. And of course they do. Revocation or cancellation proceedings are seen as a very useful tool for third parties to gain leverage in trademark disputes. It's a relatively cheap procedure for the party applying for revocation, but it's not so cheap for the trademark registration owner, particularly if he or she is unprepared. Consider creating a set of trademark guidelines, particularly if you have a portfolio of several marks. Use of the mark must be, as I said, as filed on the register or substantially the same. Of course, at the beginning of a mark's life, you'll likely be using it as filed, but a few months or years down the line, you need to check in if you are using the mark in the same way. So for example, did you file for a yellow logo mark, but actually now you only use it in green? Use in green may not be enough to validate the trademark registration, and this can have consequences if you are put in the situation where you have to evidence use of your mark. So how do you evidence your use? Retaining evidence of your use is also an important part of trademark hygiene, and it's good practice to have a system to do so. Many companies have press sections on their websites where they display press articles about their products. And such articles are very strong evidence of use because they're independent. They actually have a dual purpose. You get positive advertising and endorsement of your brand, as well as excellent evidence of use. Invoices, these are another very good evidence of use. Remember, they need to show a date, your mark, or at least a reference to a product which you can then link to the trademark, and a UK address. One small point, but quite important. If you change computers, software packages, etc., invoices on the old system are very unlikely to pull through to the new system. So you do need to retain a selection of your older invoices just in case, because these again are excellent evidence of use. We've looked at trademark hygiene in the sense of trademark registrations and protecting them. But what else can you be doing that is good trademark hygiene? One of them is watching what others are doing and checking they are not too close to your brand. This is also an extremely important part of trademark hygiene. The longer you leave another company or an individual using the mark that is the same or similar to yours, the harder it becomes to deal with the situation. And that is the case even if your actual registry brand hygiene is in tip-top condition. So what can you do about this? You could put in place a trademark watching service. This type of service watches the trademark registers to see where the same or a similar mark to yours is being filed. You may have to consider action, such as an opposition, if a similar mark is filed in a country where you are using your mark or you have a trademark registration. Monitor social networks and online retailers such as Amazon and eBay. Check out who's using your brand and make sure that it's your brand on your goods. You might also want to consider internet scraping services. These are very advanced these days and watch not only words but also logos through image searches, and these are extremely useful to identify counterfeit goods. I've just referred to scraping the internet. The message is that there are so many different ways that AI can be useful to a brand owner in its trademark hygiene. For example, you can use AI to create new logos, coined words, product designs, and create advertising campaigns. You can even enter new worlds, the metaverse. That's the subject of another video by itself. Edwin Co is a full-service law firm with an active and engaged intellectual property team. We'd be delighted to take a look at your trademark portfolio and run through any issues or questions you may have.